What if I told you that your fear of speaking, that tight feeling in your chest, that frozen moment when someone asks you a question and your mind goes completely blank? What if I told you that fear is not a personality flaw? What if it is not who you are? What if, instead, it is simply a data processing error happening inside your brain?
Right. And I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking, Lily, Bruce, I have been shy my whole life. I have always been nervous when I speak. This is just the way I am. But here is what is fascinating, and this is what we are going to explore together today. The brain is not fixed. It is not permanently wired the way you think.
And most people fail at building social confidence because they look at every stumble, every awkward pause, every mispronounced word, and they say, "See, I cannot do this. I am just not good at talking." But what if those stumbles are not evidence of failure? What if they are actually the fuel, the raw material for fluency?
That is exactly what we are unpacking today, and I want you to stay with us for the entire video, because by the end of this lesson, you are going to walk away with something truly powerful. You are going to have a completely new way of thinking about your voice, your words, and your value in every conversation you enter.
We are going to look at 5 major psychological shifts, backed by neuroscience, backed by real human behavior, and designed specifically for English learners who want to stop being silent in the moments that matter most.
And just to give you a little preview of what is ahead, because I think this will really hook you in, we are going to start by understanding why your brain actually treats a difficult conversation the same way it would treat a lion chasing you through the jungle. Seriously, we are going to look at the neuroscience of that.
Then we are going to talk about something I call the error as data revolution, which is going to completely change the way you see your mistakes. After that, we are going to introduce the curiosity pivot strategy, which is one of the most powerful mental shifts you can make as a speaker.
We are also going to teach you how to physically stabilize your nervous system using a specific breathing sequence, because confidence is not just in your mind, it is in your body.
And finally, we are going to talk about how to forge a completely new identity, because lasting confidence is not a skill you practice, it becomes who you are.
This is going to be a long, rich, deeply rewarding lesson. So get comfortable, grab a drink, maybe a notebook, and let us get into it.
Let us go.
All right, Lily, let us start at the very beginning. And I mean the very beginning. Not just the beginning of your English learning journey, but the beginning of human evolution itself, because that is truly where this story starts.
I love this part, because when people understand why their brain does what it does, they immediately stop blaming themselves. And that shift alone, that simple shift from "I am broken" to "my brain is doing something very specific and very understandable," that shift is already the beginning of confidence.
So let us set the scene. Imagine you are a human being living approximately 50,000 years ago. You are not sitting in a classroom, you are not on a Zoom call, you are not trying to order a coffee in a foreign language. You are living in a small tribe of maybe 30 to 50 people, and your entire survival depends on belonging to that group.
If the group accepts you, you eat, you stay warm, you are protected from predators. If the group rejects you, if they kick you out, you are alone in the wilderness. And alone in the wilderness means one thing: death.
So your brain, over thousands and thousands of years of evolution, became exquisitely sensitive to social threat. Any sign of rejection, any sign that the group might not accept you, any moment where you feel like you are being evaluated and found lacking, your brain treats that as a life or death emergency.
And here is the fascinating part. Here is the part that the latest 2026 neuroimaging research is really clarifying for us. When your brain detects a social threat, let us say you are about to speak in English and you are afraid of making a mistake, the same areas of your brain activate as they would if you were facing a physical threat.
We are talking about the amygdala. This is the part of your brain that sits deep in the limbic system, the emotional center. And its one primary job, is to detect danger and sound the alarm. The amygdala does not think. It does not reason. It does not say, is this actually dangerous? It just reacts fast.
And when it sounds the alarm, a cascade of things happen in your body almost instantly. Your heart rate goes up, your breathing becomes shallow and fast. Blood flow moves away from your prefrontal cortex, the thinking, reasoning part of your brain, and toward your muscles because your body is getting ready to fight or run away.
And your vocal cords, here is the part that directly affects speakers. Your vocal cords tighten, your throat closes slightly, your mouth goes dry. The smooth, fluid speech that you can produce when you are relaxed at home suddenly becomes stiff and hesitant and completely unlike the English you are capable of.
And you know what the worst part is? You then look at that stiff, hesitant speech and you think, see, I cannot speak English. But you are wrong. You cannot speak English while your amygdala is hijacking your entire system. That is a completely different thing.
This is such an important distinction. Let me say it again because I think it is easy to miss. The problem is not your English. The problem is not your vocabulary or your grammar or your accent. The problem is a neurological alarm system that was built for a world that no longer exists, going off at the wrong moment.
And here is something that the 2026 research on social anxiety is really confirming. This is something that scientists like Dr. Matthew Lieberman at UCLA have been building toward for years. Social pain and physical pain actually activate overlapping regions of the brain. When you feel embarrassed or rejected, your brain processes it similarly to the way it processes physical pain.
Which means that when you stumble over a word and you feel that wave of shame and embarrassment, your brain is not being dramatic. It is genuinely registering something that feels painful. And because it is painful, your natural response is to avoid it, to stay quiet, to not take the risk.
And avoidance, in the short term, feels like relief. You did not speak up in the meeting, and you did not embarrass yourself, and so you feel safe. But in the long term, and this is what keeps so many English learners stuck for years and years, that avoidance is actually making the anxiety stronger.
Every time you avoid speaking, you are sending a message to your amygdala, you were right. That situation was dangerous. Good job sounding the alarm. And the amygdala files that away. It gets more sensitive. It starts sounding the alarm even earlier, even louder, even in situations that are actually very low risk.
So the very thing that feels like protection is actually feeding the fear. That is the biological trap of social survival. And I want to make sure this really lands before we move on. Are you okay continuing with this, Bruce?
Absolutely. And actually, I want to add one more piece to this puzzle because I think it really deepens the understanding. It is something called the spotlight effect. And this is where the neuroscience and the psychology really come together in a fascinating way.
Oh, yes, the spotlight effect. This is one of those concepts that, once you understand it, completely changes the way you experience social situations.
Here is the spotlight effect in a nutshell. When you walk into a room, when you speak in a group, when you make a mistake in a conversation, you feel like every single person in that room is watching you. You feel like you are under a giant spotlight, and everyone can see exactly what you are doing, exactly what you are feeling, every error you are making.
You mispronounce a word and you think, everyone heard that. Everyone noticed. Everyone is judging me right now. And that thought, that feeling of being watched and evaluated, amplifies the anxiety to sometimes unbearable levels.
But here is what the research tells us, and this has been replicated in study after study, most famously by Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky at Cornell University. People are not paying nearly as much attention to you as you think they are.
In their classic study, they had participants wear an embarrassing t-shirt into a room of people and then estimate how many people in the room noticed the shirt. Participants consistently overestimated by a factor of 2 to 3. They thought half the room noticed. In reality, only about a quarter of people did, at most.
And that was with an embarrassing t-shirt, something visually conspicuous. When it comes to small verbal errors in conversation, a slightly wrong grammar, a moment of hesitation, a word you could not find, the gap between how much you think people notice and how much they actually notice is even bigger.
Because here is the truth about the people you are speaking to. They are not listening to you the way you listen to yourself. They are thinking about what they want to say next. They are thinking about their own problems, their own day, their own insecurities. They are not cataloging your errors.
And even if they do notice a mistake, even if someone does hear you stumble, the judgment you imagine they are making is far more severe in your mind than in theirs. Most people hear a mistake and think, oh, interesting, they are learning English, and then they move on. They have already forgotten it by the time you are still replaying it in your head hours later.
That internal hyperfocus, that mental microscope you point at your own performance, is creating a distorted reality. It is a cognitive distortion, and it is one of the primary engines driving speaking anxiety.
So let us pause here for a moment, because I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually think about this, not just listen passively. Think about a recent conversation where you felt anxious, where you felt like everyone was watching you, evaluating you. Can you picture it?
Now, in that conversation, do you know what the other person was thinking? Do you actually know that they were judging every syllable you said? Or is that a story your brain created? A story based on an ancient alarm system that was built to protect you from dangers that no longer exist?
And here is the deeper question. What would you have said in that moment if you had not been afraid? What thought, what idea, what part of yourself did you hold back because the spotlight felt too bright?
That is the cost of the biological trap, and it is too high a price to keep paying. So let us talk about how to begin stepping out of it.
The first step, and this might sound almost too simple, but it is grounded in some very solid neuroscience, is learning to identify the exact moment the amygdala hijacks your system. Psychologists call this moment the amygdala hijack, a term coined by Daniel Goleman in his work on emotional intelligence.
The amygdala hijack happens in milliseconds. One moment, you are fine. The next moment, maybe someone asks you a question unexpectedly, or maybe you are about to introduce yourself to a group, and suddenly you feel it, that rush of heat, that tightening in the chest, that sudden blankness where your vocabulary used to be.
And most people, when they feel that hijack, they try to push through it. They try to force words out while their system is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. And the result is exactly what they were afraid of: stumbling, hesitating, losing their train of thought.
But here is what the research shows works better. Instead of pushing through the hijack, you name it, you label it. And this is something that really impressed me when I first read about it. Research by Matthew Liberman has shown that simply labeling an emotion, saying to yourself, even silently, "I feel anxious right now," actually reduces amygdala activity.
The act of naming the feeling brings the prefrontal cortex back online. It is like switching the lights back on in the rational part of your brain. When you label the anxiety, you are no longer just feeling it. You are observing it, and distance creates choice.
So the practical technique here is this. In the moment before you speak, that critical moment when you feel the hijack beginning, you say to yourself, silently or even out loud if you can, I notice I am feeling anxious right now. My amygdala is activated. This is a normal response. I am safe.
And we are going to come back to this in much more detail in section 4, you take one slow, deliberate breath. Just one, and you begin.
Not perfectly, not fluently, not without any fear. You begin anyway. Because here is the thing, and this is a truth that every confident speaker knows. Confidence is not the absence of anxiety. Confidence is the decision to speak, even when anxiety is present.
I love that. Say that again, Lily.
Confidence is not the absence of anxiety. Confidence is the decision to speak even when anxiety is present.
That distinction changes everything. Because so many English learners are waiting to feel confident before they speak. They are waiting until they have enough vocabulary, waiting until their accent is better, waiting until they feel ready. But that readiness never comes. Not that way.
Readiness comes through action, through doing the thing while you are still afraid. And your brain, over time, starts to update its threat assessment. It starts to learn, wait, I spoke, I made a mistake, and I survived, and nothing terrible happened. Maybe this is not as dangerous as I thought.
And slowly, the alarm gets quieter. The hijack becomes less intense. The spotlight feels less blinding, and you begin to find your voice.
But before we move to the next section, and trust me, what is coming next is one of my absolute favorite topics because it completely flips the way you think about mistakes, I want to give you one quick exercise to try. Something practical you can start doing today.
Great idea. Let us do it.
Here is the exercise. It is called the threat audit. Before your next social situation, before your next English conversation, your next meeting, your next interaction with a stranger, I want you to do a quick mental audit. Ask yourself 3 questions.
Question 1. What is the actual worst thing that could realistically happen if I speak and make a mistake?
Not the catastrophic version your anxiety creates, the realistic version. What actually, realistically, is the worst outcome?
Question 2. If that worst thing happened, could I handle it? Could I recover?
And question 3. How much of what I am afraid people will think of me is based on actual evidence versus a story my brain is telling me?
9 times out of 10, when you really answer those questions honestly, you discover that the actual risk is very small, that you could absolutely handle the worst-case scenario, and that the story of judgment in your head is almost entirely fictional.
And that audit, that brief moment of rational evaluation, can be enough to get the prefrontal cortex back in the driver's seat and move the amygdala to the passenger seat where it belongs.
Brilliant! And speaking of what belongs where, in the next section, we are going to talk about something that I think is going to fundamentally change your relationship with mistakes. Most learners think of errors as evidence of failure. But what if the most confident speakers in the world think of errors in a completely different way?
Stay with us, because this next shift, the error as data revolution, is probably the single most powerful mindset change I have ever seen transform a learner's speaking confidence. Let us get into it. Okay, Bruce, I want to start this section with a story, because I think stories are the best way to make ideas really stick. Is that okay?
Please, I love your stories.
So imagine you are Thomas Edison. The year is somewhere in the late 1800s, and you are trying to invent the electric light bulb, and it is not going well.
Understatement of the century.
It is really not going well. You have tried over 1,000 different materials for the filament, the tiny wire inside the bulb that glows when electricity runs through it. And every single one has failed. Every single one. And people around you, journalists, critics, fellow scientists, they are saying, Edison, give it up. You have failed 1,000 times. You are clearly not capable of this.
And what does Edison say?
He says something that has become one of the most famous quotes in the history of innovation. He says something like, I have not failed. I have simply found 10,000 ways that do not work.
10,000 ways that do not work. Each of those is data.
Each of those is data. Each failure told him something specific. This material burns too quickly, that one conducts too much heat, this one is too brittle. Every single failure was a message, a piece of information, a step closer to the solution.
And that is exactly how the most confident English speakers relate to their linguistic mistakes.
Think about it this way. When you say the wrong word in English, when you conjugate a verb incorrectly, when you use the wrong preposition, when your pronunciation makes someone ask you to repeat yourself, what do?
Most learners, and I have seen this pattern so many times, most learners feel a wave of shame. They apologize profusely, they go quiet. They decide in that moment never to try that word or that sentence structure again. They retreat into safe, simple language that they know for certain will not get them into trouble.
And that retreat, that contraction into safety, is one of the biggest obstacles to real fluency. Because fluency does not come from staying safe. Fluency comes from attempting, failing, getting feedback, adjusting, and attempting again. That is how every human being ever learned any complex skill.
Think about a baby learning to walk. Does a baby fall down and decide, well, I guess walking is not for me. I will just crawl forever. Clearly, I am not built for this.
No! The baby falls, gets up, falls again, gets up again, and eventually, through hundreds and hundreds of small failures and adjustments, the baby walks, and then runs, and then dances.
No one looks at a learning baby and says, oh, that poor child, they keep falling. They are so bad at walking. We look at a learning baby and we cheer. We celebrate the attempts. We know that every fall is part of the process.
But somewhere between babyhood and adulthood, we lose that understanding. We start seeing attempts as performances. We start seeing failures as verdicts. And we stop doing the brave, messy, essential work of trying.
And this is where the concept I want to introduce really becomes so powerful. It is called the beta testing mindset, and it comes from the world of software development. Let me explain it.
Yes, I love this framework. Go ahead.
So in the software world, when developers build a new program or an app, they do not release it to the world in its perfect final form right away. First, they release what is called a beta version. The beta version is incomplete. It has bugs, it has glitches, things do not always work the way they should.
But here is the thing. They release it anyway. They put it out into the world on purpose, in its imperfect state. And they watch what happens. They collect data. Users report bugs. The developers see where people get confused. They get information they could never have gotten by just sitting in a lab trying to make it perfect.
And then they update the program. They fix the bugs. They improve the things that were not working. They release version 1.1. Then 1.2, then 2.0. And over time, through this continuous cycle of releasing, getting feedback, and improving, the program becomes excellent.
Now apply that exact framework to your English speaking. Every conversation you have is a beta release. Your language, right now, today, is a beta version. It is not the final version. It is not supposed to be the final version. It is supposed to be the current working version, imperfect, functional, improving.
And every mistake you make in a conversation is a bug report. It is feedback. It is data. It is telling you, hey, this particular construction does not work the way you think it does. This word does not mean what you thought it meant. This pronunciation is causing confusion.
And when you receive that feedback, when someone corrects you, or when you notice a blank look of confusion on someone's face, or when you realize mid-sentence that you chose the wrong word, you do not shut down. You do not apologize in a spiral of shame. You update.
You say, either out loud or in your mind, interesting, good to know. I will file that away. And you continue, because you are a beta tester, not a performance artist. You are a scientist, not an actor. Your job is to collect data, not to perform flawlessly.
And I want to give you a very practical way to experience this shift right now. I want you to think about a specific mistake you have made recently in English. Maybe in a conversation, maybe in writing, maybe even just thinking in your head. Something that made you feel embarrassed or inadequate.
Got one? Good. Now, instead of thinking about that mistake as evidence of your inadequacy, I want you to treat it as a piece of data. Ask yourself, what did this mistake tell me? What did I think was correct that apparently was not? What is the gap between my current understanding and the correct understanding?
And here is the key. And this is what makes the beta testing mindset so powerful. You then fill that gap, not with self-criticism, not with shame, with information. You look up the correct form, you practice it, you notice it in native speakers' writing and speech, you add it to your understanding.
That is exactly how a scientist approaches their work. A scientist does not get emotional when an experiment fails. They say, interesting, that did not work as expected. What does that tell me? How do I update my hypothesis?
And this brings us to one of the most important psychological concepts behind this entire mindset shift, Carol Dweck's work on fixed versus growth mindset. I am sure many of you have heard of this, but let us really apply it to English speaking specifically, because I think the application is deeper than most people realize.
A fixed mindset, when applied to speaking, sounds like this. I made a mistake. That means I am not good at this. Some people are naturally good speakers and some are not, and I am in the second group.
A growth mindset sounds like this. I made a mistake. That is valuable information. It tells me exactly what I need to work on next. My speaking ability is not fixed. It is a process, and this mistake just moved me forward in that process.
The difference sounds subtle, but the behavioral consequences are enormous. The fixed mindset speaker avoids challenges, gives up when things get difficult, and treats other people's success as a reminder of their own inadequacy.
The growth mindset speaker seeks out challenges, persists through difficulty, and treats other people's success as inspiration and proof of what is possible.
And here is something really important that Dweck's research found, something that surprises a lot of people. The difference between these two mindsets is not about intelligence or talent. It is about belief. It is about what you have been taught, either explicitly or implicitly, to believe about ability.
Many of us were taught, by schools, by parents, by grades and test scores, that intelligence is fixed, that you either have it or you do not, that being wrong means being inadequate, that mistakes are shameful.
And those beliefs, absorbed young, become the lens through which we see every new challenge, including learning to speak English.
But beliefs can be changed. That is what makes this so hopeful. The brain is plastic. The mindset is not permanent. And every time you consciously choose to interpret a mistake as data rather than as a verdict, you are literally rewiring the neural connections that govern how you relate to challenge.
And speaking of rewiring, I want to introduce something here that I think is going to be really practical and useful. It is a specific technique for shifting from the perfection mindset to the data mindset in real time, in the middle of a conversation.
Tell us.
It is called the micro report. Here is how it works. When you make a mistake in a conversation, when you feel that internal cringe, that wave of shame, instead of disappearing into it, you make a tiny mental note. You file a micro report.
Just 1 or 2 words that capture what happened. Wrong tense, wrong preposition. Could not find the word for this concept. Just a brief, neutral, factual note. And then you continue.
After the conversation, you come back to your micro reports. You look at them without judgment. You use them as a study guide. You practice those exact points. You are becoming your own most effective language teacher.
And over time, this is the beautiful part, the things on your micro report list get shorter and shorter because you are actually addressing them. You are closing the gaps. The same mistakes stop repeating. Your language gets cleaner and more confident.
But there is something even deeper happening here. Every time you file a micro report, instead of collapsing into shame, you are training your brain to associate speaking with curiosity and improvement rather than danger and inadequacy.
And that association, curiosity and improvement instead of danger and inadequacy, is the psychological foundation of speaking confidence. It is not about never making mistakes. It is about having a healthy, productive relationship with the mistakes you make.
I want to share a quick analogy that I think really captures this. Imagine you are learning to cook. You make a dish and it does not taste quite right. Too salty, not enough seasoning, the texture is off. What do?
You taste it again. You think about what might be missing. You adjust. You try again.
You don't throw the whole pot out and declare yourself a failure as a cook. You adjust and try again. And the next dish is a little better. And the one after that is a little better still.
And one day, years later, you are making dishes that are genuinely delicious. Not because you never made mistakes, but because you made thousands of mistakes and learned from every single one of them.
That is the error as data revolution. And I am going to say something now that might sound provocative, but I mean it completely sincerely.
What is that?
Making mistakes in English is not a sign that you are struggling. It is a sign that you are growing. Learners who make no mistakes are learners who are not attempting anything new. They are staying inside the tiny, safe circle of what they already know. And that circle never grows.
The learners who make bold mistakes, who try new words, new sentences, new ideas, even when they are not sure they will get it right, those are the learners who grow fastest because they are generating the most data. They are running the most experiments.
And this is the essence of the beta testing mindset. Not recklessness, not carelessness, but intentional, curious, courageous experimentation with language.
So here is your exercise for this section, and I really want you to try this one because it is simple, but it is genuinely transformative.
For the next 7 days, I want you to keep an error journal. Every time you make a mistake in English, whether you notice it yourself or someone else points it out, write it down in your journal. Not with shame, with curiosity.
What did I say or write? What should I have said or written? What does this tell me about a gap in my understanding? What can I do to practice this specific point?
And at the end of 7 days, look at your journal. You are going to see patterns. You are going to see specific, actionable areas to work on. But more importantly, you are going to see something else.
You are going to see that you were brave enough to speak over and over again, despite the anxiety, despite the risk of mistakes. And that bravery, that consistent, courageous action is the real foundation of confidence.
Your mistakes are your map to fluency. Follow them.
Beautiful. And by the way, if you are enjoying this lesson and finding it useful, please take a moment right now to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We put a lot of love and work into these lessons, and every like and subscription genuinely helps us reach more English learners who need this content. And if you want more English listening practice, be sure to check out our podcast playlist on this channel. We have a whole collection of lessons designed to help you improve your English naturally and confidently through listening.
Okay, now let us move into something that I have personally found to be one of the most instantly effective techniques for reducing speaking anxiety. It is the curiosity pivot strategy. And when Bruce and I first talked about this concept, we both had the same reaction. We thought, why did no one teach us this earlier?
It is genuinely life-changing. Let us get into it.
Lily, before we get into the strategy itself, I want to paint a picture. I want to describe a mental experience that I think every person watching this video has had. Is that okay?
Please.
You are in a social situation. Maybe it's a party. Maybe it's a work meeting. Maybe it is a class where the teacher might call on you. And you are thinking, you are really thinking. But not about the conversation, not about the people around you. You are thinking about yourself.
How do I sound right now? Is my accent too strong? Did I just use the wrong verb tense? Are they noticing that I am struggling? Am I speaking too slowly? Too fast? Am I making sense? Do they think I am smart? Do they think I am stupid? Should I have said something different? Why did I say that?
It is like having a very loud, very critical radio station playing in your head at all times. And while that radio station is blaring, you cannot actually listen to the person in front of you. You cannot be present in the conversation. You are too busy monitoring and evaluating your own performance.
And the worst part? Here is the real trap. That self-monitoring loop actually makes your speaking worse, because all the mental resources you could be using to find words, to construct sentences, to understand what is being said, are being consumed by the anxiety loop.
So you speak badly because you are anxious. And then you see yourself speaking badly, and that makes you more anxious. And then you speak even worse. It is a perfect, devastating feedback loop.
And here is what is remarkable about the curiosity pivot strategy. It interrupts that loop at its source, not by trying to silence the anxiety, which, as we have seen, actually makes it louder, but by redirecting attention away from the self and outward toward the other person.
Here is the core principle. Performance anxiety lives in self-focus. Curiosity lives in other focus, and you cannot be fully in both states at the same time.
Let me say that again. Performance anxiety lives in self-focus. Curiosity lives in other focus. When your mind is genuinely occupied with curiosity about another person, when you are truly wondering, what is this person's story? What do they know that I do not? What is their experience of the world? There is simply less mental space for the anxiety loop to run.
It is like a cognitive displacement strategy. You are not fighting the anxiety directly, you are displacing it with something more interesting, more engaging, and more externally directed.
And the internal monologue shifts. Instead of asking yourself, how do I sound, which is an inward, performance-focused question, you start asking yourself, what can I learn about this person? And that is an outward, curiosity-focused question.
And that simple shift in question changes everything about how you show up in a conversation. Let me give you a concrete example.
Let us say you are at an English language exchange event. You see someone standing alone and you decide to approach them. In the anxiety mindset, the moment before you approach them, your brain is running, what do I say first? What if my opening line sounds weird? What if my accent is too strong? What if they do not understand me?
Now, in the curiosity mindset, you approach with a completely different internal orientation. Your brain is running, I wonder what brought this person here tonight. I wonder where they are from. I wonder what language they speak natively. I wonder what their biggest challenge with English is.
And here is what happens. The questions you are running internally produce a completely different quality of attention. When you are running anxiety questions, you are closed, contracted, self-focused. When you are running curiosity questions, you are open, expansive, other-focused.
And people feel that. This is something that is very well documented in social psychology. People can sense whether your attention is on them or on yourself. And when your attention is genuinely on them, when you are truly curious about them, they respond to you differently.
They open up more. They are more forgiving of mistakes. They are more engaged. The conversation flows more naturally. And as the conversation flows naturally, your anxiety drops. And as your anxiety drops, your language becomes more fluent, and your fluency reinforces your confidence.
It is the positive version of the feedback loop we talked about earlier. And it starts with that simple pivot from how do I sound to what can I learn about this person?
Now, I want to talk about the mechanics of this in a little more detail, because I think the theory makes sense, but people often ask, okay, but how do I actually do this? My brain naturally goes to self-monitoring. How do I redirect it?
Great question, and the answer lies in what are called active observation techniques. These are specific things you do physically and mentally to shift your attention outward.
The first active observation technique is what I call the detail hunt. When you are in a conversation, your assignment, and I mean this literally, give yourself this as an assignment, is to notice 3 specific, concrete details about the person you're speaking to.
Not vague impressions like, they seem nice, or they seem nervous. Specific details. What are they doing with their hands? Are they making a lot of eye contact or looking away? What are they talking about with enthusiasm, and what seems to make them a little uncomfortable?
When your brain is hunting for these specific details, it is busy, it is engaged, it does not have spare capacity for the anxiety spiral. You are giving your nervous system a job to do, a specific, concrete, achievable job, and that job crowds out the noise.
The second active observation technique is called the echo listen. This is where, as someone is speaking to you, you are gently repeating key words in your mind, just 1 or 2 words from each sentence, to keep your attention anchored to what they are saying.
For example, if someone says, I just got back from a trip to South Korea and it was absolutely incredible, you might echo in your mind, South Korea, incredible. And then you are genuinely curious. Why was it incredible? What did they see? What surprised them?
And your genuine curiosity then produces genuine questions. Not the polite, performative questions that anxiety produces, the ones where you are asking just to seem engaged while your brain is actually still running the self-monitoring loop, but real questions that come from real interest.
And real questions produce real conversations. And real conversations are the ones that feel good, that feel easy, that do not feel like performances at all.
Now I want to introduce something that we mentioned in the video outline, the 2026 Curiosity Hack. This is a technique that has been gaining real traction in social anxiety research and coaching communities, and it is beautifully simple.
The technique is this. Before any social interaction, you give yourself one specific mission. Your mission is to discover 3 unique facts about the person you are speaking to.
3 unique facts, not generic information, not they are from Brazil or they work in finance, but genuinely unique, specific details that you could not have guessed in advance. Something about their inner world, their experience, their perspective.
And why 3? Because 3 is the magic number for this kind of exercise. One fact is too easy. It does not require enough sustained curiosity to crowd out anxiety. 2 facts gets you halfway there, but 3 facts requires you to ask genuine follow-up questions, to really listen to the answers, to stay engaged across multiple exchanges.
And in the process of hunting for those 3 unique facts, something happens that is almost like magic. You forget to be anxious. Not completely. Anxiety does not disappear instantly, but it fades into the background because your foreground is occupied with something genuinely interesting.
I tried this technique at a conference a few months ago. I was genuinely nervous. It was a large, unfamiliar group, lots of people who seemed very confident and accomplished. And I gave myself the mission: 3 unique facts about the first person I talked to.
And what happened?
I ended up in a 30-minute conversation that I did not want to end. The person I spoke to told me about a childhood experience that shaped their entire career, something I never would have discovered if I had been managing my anxiety instead of exploring their world. And at the end of the conversation, they said, "You are one of the best conversationalists I have ever met." And I was genuinely shocked because I felt like I barely talked at all.
And that is exactly the point. Great conversationalists are not the ones who talk the most. They are the ones who listen most genuinely. They are the ones who make the other person feel most interesting, most seen, most understood.
And the beautiful irony is that when you make the other person feel interesting, they will invariably find you interesting in return, not because of your performance, but because of your genuine attention.
Now, let us talk about something that I think is really important to address. You might be thinking, this all sounds good for native speakers, but what about for me as an English learner? I cannot just be curious when I literally do not know how to express what I want to say.
And I hear that concern completely, so let me address it directly. The curiosity pivot strategy does not eliminate the language challenge. It removes one of the biggest additional barriers on top of the language challenge, the anxiety barrier.
Think of it this way. Speaking English as a learner is already hard. You are translating thoughts, constructing grammar, monitoring pronunciation, all in real time. That is a significant cognitive load. The anxiety spiral adds another enormous cognitive load on top of that. It drains resources that you need for the language itself.
The curiosity pivot strategy removes the anxiety load, freeing up more of your mental resources for the actual language work. Your vocabulary is still the same. Your grammar knowledge is still the same, but now you have more available cognitive resources to access them.
There is also a social contract at play here. When people can see that you are genuinely engaged, genuinely curious about them, they become much more patient and helpful. If you struggle to find a word and you ask, "Sorry, how do you say," while looking genuinely interested in the conversation, they will almost always help you cheerfully.
Now let us talk about gamification, because this is another dimension of the curiosity approach that I absolutely love. Gamification is the idea of applying game-like elements to non-game activities. And it turns out our brains respond remarkably well to it because games tap into some of our most fundamental reward circuits.
Games have clear objectives. They have scoring systems, they have progress indicators, they have challenges that feel achievable with effort. And all of those elements make the brain release dopamine, the neurotransmitter of motivation and reward.
So the 3 unique facts mission we described earlier, that is gamification. You have a clear objective, 3 facts. You can track your progress. Got 1, got 2, working on 3. And when you find the 3rd fact, there is a small but genuine sense of accomplishment.
And you can scale this. Give yourself a point for every new person you approach. 2 points for every conversation that lasts more than 5 minutes. 3 points for every time you tried a new word or sentence structure you have been practicing.
The specific scoring system matters less than the fact that you have one, because having an objective, even a playful, self-created one, shifts your relationship to social interactions from "this is a test I might fail" to "this is a game I am playing." And in a game, there is no real failure. There are only moves.
Here is a quick mental rehearsal exercise you can try right now. Close your eyes if you are comfortable. Imagine a social situation that would normally make you anxious. Picture the people there. Picture the room.
Now, instead of imagining the conversation from your usual angle, that camera angle pointed at yourself, watching yourself perform, shift the camera outward, point it at the other people, and become curious, really curious about each of them.
Remind yourself that every person in that room has a story so complex and rich and textured that you could spend hours with them and still not know the half of it. You are not a performer in that room. You are an explorer.
Remind yourself that every person in that room has a story so complex and rich and textured that you could spend hours with them and still not know the half of it. You are not a performer in that room. You are an explorer.
And that feeling is available to you in every real social interaction. It takes practice to access it under the pressure of real conversations. But every time you practice it, it becomes more available, more automatic, more natural.
And that is actually a perfect bridge to our next section, because we have talked about the mental and psychological shifts that build confidence. But there is a whole other dimension to this, the physical, physiological dimension. The mind and the body are not separate systems. They are deeply, continuously influencing each other.
In the next section, we are going to talk about how to use your body, your breath, your posture, your speech rhythm to directly signal safety to your nervous system and unlock the kind of calm, grounded presence that powerful speakers radiate. Do not go anywhere. We are just getting to the good part.
Bruce, let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that when you listen to someone who is genuinely confident, a great speaker, a charismatic leader, a skilled interviewer, there is something different about the way they breathe?
Yes, actually, I never really put words to it, but there is something. They seem to have space around their words, like they are not in a hurry.
Exactly. And that space, that unhurried quality, is not accidental. It is not just a personality trait. It is a physiological state. And the remarkable thing is that it is a physiological state you can learn to create intentionally, on command.
We are talking about the connection between the breath and the nervous system. And this is one of those areas where the science is so clear, so well established, and yet so few people actually put it into practice in their daily communication.
Let us start with the basics. The nervous system has two primary modes of operation. There is the sympathetic nervous system. This is the fight or flight mode we have been talking about. When the amygdala sounds the alarm, the sympathetic system kicks in. Heart rate goes up, breath becomes shallow and fast, muscles tense.
And there is the parasympathetic nervous system, sometimes called the rest and digest system. When the parasympathetic system is dominant, the heart rate slows, the breath deepens, the muscles relax, the prefrontal cortex comes back online. You feel calm, present, and capable.
And here is the absolutely remarkable thing, the thing that changes everything when you really understand it. The breath is the only automatic function, the only bodily process that normally operates without conscious control that you can also control consciously.
Think about that. You cannot consciously control your heart rate directly. You cannot consciously control your blood pressure, but you can control your breath consciously, right now, at will.
And because the breath is so closely linked to the nervous system, specifically through the vagus nerve, which connects the brain to the heart, lungs, and digestive system, changing the breath pattern changes the nervous system state. You can literally breathe yourself from fight or flight into rest and digest.
And this is not mystical or abstract. This is hard physiology. Researchers like Andrew Huberman at Stanford have done extensive work showing how specific breathing patterns directly modulate heart rate variability, cortisol levels, and amygdala reactivity.
And the technique we are going to teach you right now, the 4-7-8 breathing sequence, is one of the most well-studied, most reliable methods for quickly activating the parasympathetic nervous system. It was popularized by Dr. Andrew Weil, and it builds on ancient pranayama traditions that have been using breath control for thousands of years.
Here is how it works. You inhale through your nose for a count of 4. You hold the breath for a count of 7, and you exhale through your mouth completely for a count of 8.
Let us do it together right now. Even if you are watching this on your phone, on your commute, try it.
Inhale through your nose, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And exhale through your mouth, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let it all out.
How does that feel? Even one round has an effect. There is usually a slight softening of tension in the chest and shoulders, a small but noticeable quieting of the mental noise.
The reason it works so powerfully is largely in that long exhale. Exhaling activates the parasympathetic nervous system more strongly than inhaling does. When you breathe out slowly and completely, you are directly stimulating the vagus nerve, which sends a safety signal from the body back up to the brain.
You are essentially hacking the alarm system. You are sending the amygdala a false alarm, in reverse. You are saying, body is calm, breath is slow and deep. Therefore, environment must be safe, and the brain believes it.
Practically speaking, when do you use this before you speak? Because in most social situations, you cannot stop and visibly do 4 cycles of controlled breathing before you say something. So here is how you integrate this into real communication situations.
First, use the 4-7-8 sequence in private before high-pressure situations. Before a job interview, before a presentation, before a class where you know you will have to speak, do 3 to 4 cycles. This preloads your nervous system with calm.
Second, in the moments just before you begin speaking, those few seconds between when someone asks you a question and when you open your mouth, take one slightly longer breath. Not conspicuously long, just a natural breath that you extend slightly on the exhale. This is enough to take the edge off the spike of anxiety that typically comes at the moment of beginning to speak.
Third, and this is something most people never consider, your breathing during speech matters as much as your breathing before speech. When anxiety is high, people tend to try to fit too many words into one breath, rushing to get everything out before they lose their nerve.
And that rushing, that breathless quality is exactly what makes speech sound anxious to the listener. The listener's nervous system actually picks up on it. It creates a slight discomfort in the listener, a feeling of urgency and tension, which then bounces back to the speaker and creates more anxiety.
Whereas slow, well-paced speech, speech that is organized around the breath, conveys authority, calm, and competence. Even if the content of what you are saying is uncertain, the delivery signals confidence.
And this is where we get into the concept of speech tempo and heart rate variability synchronization. Research has shown that when you deliberately slow your speech tempo, speaking at approximately 100 to 130 words per minute rather than the anxious 180 to 200 words per minute, your heart rate variability actually increases.
You are not just sounding calmer, you are becoming physiologically calmer as you speak.
So the prescription here is slow down, deliberately, consciously. Even if it feels uncomfortably slow to you, it almost certainly does not sound slow to your listener. The speed that feels natural when you are in the anxiety spiral is much too fast. What feels annoyingly slow to you usually sounds confident and measured to others.
And here is a practical technique for managing your pace, the deliberate pause.
The deliberate pause is one of the most underused and most powerful tools in any speaker's toolkit. And for English learners specifically, it is absolutely transformative. Here is what most learners do when they need a moment to think. They fill the silence. They say or like, or.
And fillers are not terrible. Moderate use of fillers is completely normal and human. But heavy filler use, the anxious torrent of like, signals to the listener that you are uncomfortable, and it makes the speech harder to follow.
But here is the thing. Confident speakers use silence deliberately. They pause, they think, and then they speak. And that pause, rather than signaling weakness, actually signals something very different. It signals something very different. It signals thoughtfulness. It signals authority.
Think about some of the most powerful communicators you have ever heard. Presidents, CEOs, great teachers. Watch their pacing. Watch how they use silence. They pause before key ideas. They pause after important statements. They are not rushing. They are taking their time, and their time feels worth taking.
So the technique. When you feel that anxious impulse to fill silence with fillers, practice replacing the filler with a breath. Literally. Where you would have said, take a breath instead. A slow, slightly extended breath. And then continue.
It takes practice. The first few times you do this, the silence will feel extremely uncomfortable. But remember the spotlight effect. They almost certainly are not judging the pause the way you imagine. A brief pause reads as thoughtful. A torrent of reads as uncertain.
Now let us talk about posture. Because posture is one of the fastest, most accessible ways to shift your physiological state. When you curl in, shoulders forward, chest closed, head down, your brain interprets this as a signal of submission, of low confidence, of threat.
When you open up, shoulders back, chest open, head up, standing tall, your brain receives a different signal, a signal of presence, of safety, of readiness, and this matters enormously for speaking.
So here is the practice. Before your next significant conversation, find a private moment, even 30 seconds in a hallway, and stand tall, shoulders back, chin up slightly, feet shoulder-width apart. Breathe slowly and deeply. Hold that posture and breath for 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and then walk into the conversation.
And maintain that open posture during the conversation. When you feel anxiety beginning to contract your body, when you feel your shoulders creeping forward and your voice getting smaller, take a breath and expand back into your space.
Your body is not separate from your confidence. It is a co-creator of it. Learn to use it.
Now, everything we have discussed, understanding the biology of anxiety, reframing mistakes as data, pivoting to curiosity, stabilizing through breath and body, all of these are powerful tools. But tools need someone to hold them, and the person who holds them needs to believe that they are capable of using them.
And that brings us to our fifth and final major section, the one that, in many ways, is the deepest and most lasting of all the shifts we will discuss today.
Forging the assertive identity. Let us talk about who you are becoming. Lily, I want to start this section with a question, and I want you to really sit with it before you answer. When someone asks you to describe yourself, your personality, your character, Do you use the word shy?
I used to. I really did. I used to say, I am shy, the way someone might say, I am 5 feet tall, like it was just a fact about me, a fixed, unchangeable physical reality.
And that is so common. So many people, and especially many English learners, because learning a new language adds another layer of vulnerability, walk around carrying the identity of shy person or not good at talking, and they carry it like it is simply who they are.
But here is what the science of identity and habit formation tells us. The things we believe about ourselves, our self-concept, our identity, are not just descriptions of who we are. They are instructions to our behavior. They are self-fulfilling prophecies in the most literal sense.
When you believe you are a shy person, you act in ways consistent with that belief. You avoid social situations, you stay quiet, you decline opportunities to speak, and then those avoidance behaviors reinforce the belief. The belief creates the behavior confirms the belief.
But the reverse is also true. When you change the belief, when you change the story you tell about yourself, the behavior begins to change. Not immediately, not all at once, but gradually, systematically, as the new belief begins to organize your choices and actions.
This is the foundation of what researcher James Clear calls identity-based habit formation. He argues that the most powerful and durable habit changes come not from trying to change behaviors directly, but from changing the identity underneath the behaviors.
Most people try to change their behavior by focusing on outcomes. I want to be a confident speaker, and they try to perform confidence from the outside. They try to act confident without first believing they are confident, and it feels fake. It does not last.
But when you change your identity, when you genuinely start to see yourself as a person who communicates with confidence, who welcomes social interaction, who is curious and engaged and present in conversations, the behaviors that are consistent with that identity begin to feel natural.
And the key word is begin. It is a process. The identity does not change overnight. But every action consistent with the new identity is a vote for that identity. Every time you speak when you are afraid, every time you choose curiosity over self-monitoring, every time you take a breath instead of a filler, you are casting a vote for the person you are becoming.
And over time, with enough votes, the new identity wins. What was once a conscious choice becomes an unconscious default. Your confidence is no longer something you have to manufacture. It is simply who you are.
James Clear puts it this way: every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. I love that framing because it makes the process feel achievable. You are not trying to become a completely different person overnight. You are casting votes.
And some days you will cast votes for the confident communicator. And some days, anxiety will win, and you will go quiet when you wanted to speak. And on those days, you do not declare that the whole project has failed. You just note it, understand what triggered it, and cast your next vote differently.
This is where the concept of micro-wins becomes so important, because the path from I am shy to I am a confident communicator is not a single giant leap. It is a staircase, and each step on that staircase is a micro-win.
A micro-win is a small, low-stakes action that is consistent with the new identity you are building. Not the final version, not a keynote address, but the smallest possible step in that direction.
For a very anxious English learner, the first micro-win might be commenting on a YouTube video in English. That is it. One comment, one sentence. Low stakes, no real-time pressure, no immediate judgment.
The next step might be joining an online language exchange forum and posting an introduction. Then voice messaging a language exchange partner instead of typing. then a real-time voice or video conversation, then a group conversation, then speaking in a formal class or meeting context.
Each step builds on the previous one. Each micro win changes your story about yourself slightly, and these small stories accumulate. They become a portfolio of evidence for the new identity, evidence that is very hard to argue with because it is your own lived experience.
I want to talk about the role of digital environments in building speaking confidence, because in 2026, we have so many low-stakes digital spaces where you can practice English speaking with real human beings, but with the safety net of technology. Language learning apps, online conversation partners, language exchange communities, social media in English, the opportunities to practice are genuinely vast.
And the research on language learning supports this fully. You cannot just think your way to fluency. You cannot just watch videos and read books and expect that your speaking will improve. You have to speak, repeatedly, in real or near-real contexts.
Every speaking interaction you have, even the digital, lower-stakes ones, is building neural pathways, strengthening the connections between vocabulary and output, between thought and voice, between intention and expression. It is exactly like building a muscle.
And as the muscle gets stronger, things that felt impossibly heavy before start to feel manageable. Things that required great effort become automatic. The neural pathways that were faint and hesitant become wide highways that your words can travel easily.
There is something I want to address here, though. Building a new identity takes time, and the timeline is not perfectly linear. There will be days of real progress where a conversation surprises you with how natural it felt, and there will be days that feel like a step backward, where anxiety hits harder than expected.
And both kinds of days are part of the process. The good days build your confidence. The hard days build your resilience, which is actually more important than confidence. Because confidence is having faith in your ability to succeed. Resilience is having faith in your ability to recover.
So I want to give you a daily practice, a routine that, if you commit to it consistently, will gradually and irreversibly shift your identity from anxious learner to confident communicator.
Here is the daily routine. It has 5 parts. Each one is short. Together, they take maybe 20 to 30 minutes a day.
Part 1. Morning Identity Affirmation. A specific, evidence-based statement about a speaking action you took yesterday and what it says about who you are becoming. For example, yesterday, I asked my coworker a question in English, even though I was nervous. That is something a confident communicator does. I am becoming a confident communicator. Short, specific, evidence-based.
Part 2. One micro win. Every day, plan one small speaking action that is slightly outside your current comfort zone. And you do it. No negotiating with yourself, just do it. And note it.
Part 3. Error Journal Entry. After any English interaction, note one thing that did not go perfectly, what it tells you, and what you will practice. 5 minutes. No drama, just data.
Part 4. Curiosity Review. Think back over any social interactions you had that day. Did you find yourself in the "how do I sound" mode or the "what can I learn about this person" mode? If the former, what triggered it? Noticing your patterns is the first step to changing them.
Part 5. Breath Practice. 2 minutes of 4-7-8 breathing. Every evening. Non-negotiable. This keeps your baseline nervous system regulation strong, making you more resilient in high-pressure moments.
20 to 30 minutes a day, consistently. And in 3 months, not years, 3 months, you will look back and the shift will be visible, not just to you, but to people around you.
Your voice will be different, not louder necessarily, but steadier, more grounded. The person who used to apologize before every sentence will start making statements. The person who used to wait for silence before speaking will start taking space in conversations.
And I want to end on the most important thing of all. Everything we have talked about today, all of these psychological shifts, all of these techniques, they are not about turning you into someone else. They are about removing the barriers that prevent the real you from showing up in conversation.
The anxiety, the self-monitoring, the shame around mistakes, the spotlight effect, none of those things are who you are. They are filters, distortions, interference patterns that prevent your real intelligence, your real warmth, your real humor and curiosity and insight from reaching the people you are speaking to.
And when those barriers come down, when the amygdala quiets and the breath steadies and the curiosity opens and the identity aligns, what comes through is remarkable because you are remarkable.
Every person who is learning a language, who is doing the brave, vulnerable, difficult work of expressing themselves in a second tongue, you are doing something genuinely impressive, and you deserve to be heard.
You deserve to take up space in conversations. You deserve to have your ideas received and your voice respected, not when your English is perfect, now, today, with the English you have.
Let us now dive deeper into each of these themes because I want to make sure we are giving you the full richness of these ideas. We've touched on all 5 shifts, but there is so much more to explore.
The brain is not a single, unified system. It is more like a collection of different systems, each with its own priorities, its own timescales, its own way of processing information. And understanding the structure of these systems helps you understand why speaking anxiety feels so overwhelming and so automatic.
Let us talk about the triune brain model. This is a simplified but very useful framework describing 3 layers of the brain, each one evolutionarily older than the next. The innermost layer is the brainstem, sometimes called the reptilian brain. This is the most ancient part, controlling basic survival functions, breathing, heart rate, reflexive movements.
The middle layer is the limbic system, the mammalian brain. This is the emotional center, where the amygdala lives, where memory is processed, where social bonding occurs. This system is fast, reactive, and operates largely below conscious awareness.
The outer layer is the neocortex, the uniquely human brain. This is where rational thought, language, abstract reasoning, planning, and self-awareness live. The prefrontal cortex, which we have talked about several times, is the front portion of the neocortex. It is the seat of our highest, most distinctly human intelligence.
And here is the critical piece. These 3 systems have a hierarchy of priority. In moments of perceived threat, the brainstem and limbic system override the neocortex. Because, from the perspective of evolution, when there is a threat, you do not need to think carefully. You need to react immediately.
And the limbic system, the amygdala specifically, does not distinguish between a physical threat and a social threat. A lion chasing you and a room full of people watching you make a mistake produce similar alarm signals.
This is why the prefrontal cortex goes offline during high anxiety. This is why your vocabulary seems to disappear when you are most nervous. It is not that you have forgotten the words. They are still there, in your long-term memory. But the pathways between your memory and your speech center are effectively blocked by the flood of stress hormones that the amygdala triggered.
And this explains something that many English learners find deeply frustrating. The contrast between how well they can express themselves when relaxed, in the shower, in their notes, practicing alone, versus how little comes out when they are in a high-anxiety social situation.
You are not worse at English under pressure. You are worse at accessing your English under pressure. And that is a completely different problem with a completely different set of solutions.
The solution is not to study more vocabulary or practice more grammar. The solution is to train your nervous system to register social situations as safe rather than threatening, which is exactly what all of the techniques we have been discussing are designed to do.
And there is something important about 2026 specifically. The field of affective neuroscience, the study of the emotional brain, has made enormous strides in the last 5 years. We now have neuroimaging technologies that are detailed enough to watch in real time how different emotional states affect brain connectivity.
And what this research is showing us is that the relationship between anxiety and speaking is even more specific than we previously understood. There are specific neural circuits that activate when someone is asked to speak in a second language under social pressure. And the more anxiety-prone the individual, the more intensely these circuits activate.
But the same research is also showing that these circuits are plastic. They change with experience, they change with practice, and they respond remarkably well to the kinds of mindset and behavioral interventions we are describing today.
The brain, in the most literal neurological sense, is being rewired by your practice. Every time you choose to speak despite anxiety, you are doing neuroscience. You are physically reshaping your brain. You are not just working on your English. You are working on your neurology.
Let us go deeper on the error as data mindset, because I think there are some nuances here that are worth exploring.
One thing I want to address is the difference between reframing mistakes and ignoring them. Because sometimes when people hear treat mistakes as data, not as failure, they interpret that as mistakes do not matter, and that is not what we mean at all.
We are not saying mistakes do not matter. We are saying your emotional response to mistakes should shift from shame to curiosity. The information value of the mistake is taken seriously, but the emotional weight, the identity-threatening, confidence-destroying emotional weight is released.
Let me give you a specific example. Suppose you say, I have went to the market yesterday, when you should say, I went to the market yesterday. That is a real error that a fluent speaker would not make.
In the shame response, you notice the error, you feel a wave of embarrassment, you apologize or try to deflect, and you become more hesitant and anxious for the rest of the conversation. The error has confirmed your fear that you are not good enough.
In the data response, you notice the error and you file it. Interesting. I used the wrong form of the verb go in the simple past context. I need to review the difference between gone and went. The error has given you a specific, actionable study point.
Same error, completely different experience and outcome. The shame response leaves you smaller and more anxious. The data response leaves you more informed and more prepared.
And here is something I find really compelling. The learners who progress fastest in language acquisition are not the ones who make the fewest mistakes. They are often the ones who make the most because they are attempting the most.
Research in second language acquisition consistently finds that high output learners, people who produce a lot of language, even imperfectly, outperform low output learners in terms of long-term fluency gains. Because language is not just received passively, it is produced actively. And production, even imperfect production, forces the brain to work with the language in a way that passive consumption does not.
When you speak, you are discovering gaps. You are finding the edges of your knowledge. You are creating the specific demand for the vocabulary and structures you do not yet have, a demand that passive listening alone does not create.
Stephen Krashen, one of the most influential linguists in the field of second language acquisition, talks about comprehensible input as the driver of language learning. But researchers building on his work, like Meryl Swain with her output hypothesis, have argued that output is equally critical. You need to receive language, but you also need to produce it.
And producing it, especially in social contexts with real communicative intent, the desire to actually convey something to another person drives learning in a uniquely powerful way.
So, when you speak English, even imperfectly, even with errors, you are doing some of the most valuable language learning work available to you. You are not just practicing, you are generating the very conditions that make real learning possible. Every mistake you make while genuinely trying to communicate something real is a premium learning event.
I want to spend some more time on curiosity because I think we have barely scratched the surface of how powerful it is as a tool for both reducing anxiety and building genuine social relationships.
Curiosity is one of the most universally appealing qualities in a person. When someone is genuinely curious about you, truly interested in what you think and feel and know and have experienced, you feel it, and you respond to it.
You have had transactional conversations, the kind where you go through the expected script and at the end, you know nothing more about the person than you did at the start. And you have had genuine curiosity conversations, the kind where an hour passes before you realize it, where you leave feeling energized, connected, seen.
The difference is almost entirely determined by the quality of curiosity present in the interaction. When both parties are genuinely curious, conversation becomes something closer to exploration, and exploration is always more engaging than performance.
For English learners specifically, curiosity has an additional gift. When you are genuinely curious about the person you are speaking to, you are much more likely to ask for help when you need it. You might say, "I know what I want to ask, but I do not know the right word for it. Can you help me?" And a person who feels that you are genuinely interested in them will almost always help enthusiastically.
There is also something deeply important about the relationship between curiosity and listening, because genuine curiosity forces genuine listening, and listening, real listening, not the kind where you are waiting for your turn to talk, is one of the rarest and most valued skills in human communication.
In a world where everyone is broadcasting and very few people are genuinely receiving, a good listener is unforgettable. Think about all the truly charismatic people you have ever met, the ones who made you feel like the most interesting person in the room. What made them charismatic? Almost always, they listened to you as if what you were saying was important.
And you walked away thinking, that person is brilliant, even though, looking back, in many cases, they had said relatively little. What they had done was listen brilliantly. That is the social superpower of curiosity, and it is available to you, regardless of your vocabulary level, your grammar accuracy, or your accent.
Here is one more practical technique. It is called the assumption reversal. Most of us, when we meet someone, immediately categorize them. Oh, they work in finance, probably not that interesting. These assumptions are noise. They close off conversations before they have a chance to open.
The assumption reversal is this. When you notice an assumption forming about someone, you actively reverse it. You say to yourself, this person probably has an experience or perspective or knowledge that would completely surprise me. My job is to find it.
And you approach the conversation from that orientation. And you will be genuinely, consistently surprised by how rich and unique every human being's inner world is when you actually look for it. People are endlessly interesting when you approach them with genuine curiosity. And when you discover that, when you experience conversation as a perpetual treasure hunt, social anxiety starts to feel like a small price to pay for the reward of genuine human connection.
I want to talk about something we touched on earlier, but did not fully explore, the voice itself. Because the voice is not just a vehicle for words, it is an instrument. And like any instrument, it can be tuned.
When people think about developing their English speaking skills, they usually focus on vocabulary and grammar. But the voice, the tone, the resonance, the pace, the pitch is often ignored, and yet it carries an enormous amount of communication.
Research on communication suggests that the words themselves carry a surprisingly small percentage of the emotional impact of what is communicated. A much larger portion is carried by tone, pace, volume, and other vocal qualities.
And for English learners, the voice is something that often gets contracted by anxiety. The voice gets smaller, higher in pitch, faster in pace, less resonant. All of these changes, driven by the stress response, signal insecurity to the listener.
And here is something beautiful about voice work. Improving your voice quality has a two-way effect. Yes, it makes you sound more confident to others, but the physical act of producing a fuller, slower, more resonant voice also feeds back into your own nervous system. You literally feel more confident when you speak with a confident voice.
So here is a simple voice exercise. Find a sentence you use often. It can be something simple like, "Good morning, how are you today?" Or, "My name is, and I am learning English."
Critical. Say it in your normal, everyday voice. Then say it with a slightly slower pace. Take a fraction more time between the words. Do not rush. Then say it again, trying to feel the voice vibrating in your chest rather than in your throat. This is what is called chest resonance. When the voice is resonant in the chest rather than restricted to the throat, it sounds fuller, warmer, and more authoritative.
And finally, practice ending your sentences with a slight downward inflection, a statement intonation that completes at the same level or drops slightly. In English, rising intonation at the end of a statement can make it sound like you are uncertain or seeking approval. Downward intonation signals certainty, completeness, confidence.
These are small adjustments, but small adjustments in vocal quality, practiced consistently, add up to a speaking voice that communicates confidence before your words even register.
I want to go deeper into identity change because I think it is the most important and the most misunderstood of all the shifts we have discussed today.
Most people, when they try to build confidence, focus on outcomes. I want to be a confident speaker, and they try to perform confidence. They smile more, they try to stand straighter, they try to speak louder. But underneath, the story they tell about themselves has not changed.
And sooner or later, the performance breaks down because performance is exhausting. You cannot sustain a performance indefinitely, especially in high-pressure moments. Exactly the moments when you need confidence most, the performance fails and the old story reasserts itself.
True confidence does not feel like a performance. True confidence feels like just being yourself. Like showing up as who you are, without apology, without the constant mental effort of monitoring and adjusting. It is effortless because it is identity.
And the journey from "I am a shy, anxious English learner" to "I am a curious, capable, authentic communicator in English" is a journey of identity, not a journey of skills primarily, a journey of self-concept.
That journey happens not through grand revelations or single transformative moments, but through the accumulation of small experiences that are consistent with the new identity. James Clear talks about identity change happening in 3 layers. The outermost layer is outcomes, what you want to achieve. The middle layer is processes, what you do, your habits. And the innermost layer is identity, who you believe you are.
Most people try to change from the outside in. They focus on outcomes. I want to be fluent in English. And then they try to find processes that might lead to that outcome. But without an identity shift, the process often does not stick. Because the deeper story, I am not a natural English speaker, keeps reasserting itself.
The identity-first approach works differently. You start with the question, who is the kind of person who speaks English confidently? What does that person believe about themselves? How do they react to mistakes? How do they approach social situations?
And then you ask, what would that person do today? What small action is consistent with that identity that I could take right now? And the answer is almost always something achievable, something small, something that costs you very little except the willingness to try.
But each of those small actions is a brick, and brick by brick, action by action, micro win by micro win, you are building the architecture of a new identity.
And the beautiful thing is that you do not have to believe the new identity fully before you start building it. You can act as if. You can say, I do not fully believe yet that I am a confident English speaker, but what would a confident English speaker do in this moment? And can I do that?
Usually, the answer is yes. And each time you take the action, the identity becomes a little more real, a little more yours. There is a concept in psychology called behavioral activation. The core insight is that we do not always feel our way into new actions. Sometimes we act our way into new feelings.
You do not wait to feel happy before you do joyful activities. You do joyful activities, and the feelings follow. Similarly, you do not wait to feel confident before you speak. You speak, and the feeling of confidence follows, gradually, imperfectly, but genuinely.
And I want to add something about compassion, self-compassion, because the identity-building journey is not always smooth. There will be setbacks, there will be conversations that feel terrible, days where you avoid speaking when you wanted to speak. And on those days, the most important thing is not to punish yourself.
Kristen Neff, one of the leading researchers on self-compassion, has found that self-compassion is not a soft indulgence that reduces motivation. It is actually associated with greater resilience, greater willingness to try again after failure, and better overall performance.
Being kind to yourself when you stumble does not make you give up faster. It actually makes you more likely to get back up and try again. So as you build your new identity as a confident communicator, you also need to build a new relationship with your own imperfection, a relationship of curiosity rather than shame, a relationship of patience rather than judgment.
Because the most genuinely confident speakers, the ones you admire, the ones who seem to have this effortless assurance, they are not perfect. They make mistakes. They have conversations that do not go well. The difference is that their identity is not threatened by those moments.
Their confidence is not based on flawless performance. It is based on a stable sense of who they are. A person who communicates with genuine intent, genuine curiosity, and genuine courage, regardless of how any individual conversation goes.
And that kind of confidence, identity-based, internally grounded, not dependent on external validation, that is the kind that lasts. That is the kind that genuinely transforms your experience of speaking.
We have talked about a lot of concepts and techniques today, so I want to bring them all together in a clear, practical summary, a toolkit you can actually use starting today.
Think of this as your confidence-building action plan. Let us go through each of the 5 sections and give you the most important practical takeaways from each one.
From Section 1, the biological trap, your first tool is the threat audit.
Before any high-anxiety speaking situation, take 60 seconds to ask, what is the realistic worst case? Can I handle it? Is the judgment I fear based on evidence or imagination? Use this to get your prefrontal cortex back online before you begin.
Your second tool from Section 1 is the emotion label. When you feel the amygdala hijack beginning, name it. Silently, I notice I am feeling anxious. My amygdala is activated. I am safe. This simple labeling reduces amygdala activity and brings rational thought back online.
From Section 2, the error as data revolution. Your first tool is the error journal. After any English interaction, record. What did I get wrong? What is the correct form? What will I practice? No shame, just data.
Your second tool from Section 2 is the beta tester mantra. When you make a mistake, say to yourself, good data, filing that away. It reframes the mistake in the moment and prevents the shame spiral from starting.
From Section 3, the Curiosity Pivot Strategy. Your primary tool is the 3 facts mission. Before any social interaction, give yourself the objective of discovering 3 unique, specific facts about the person you will talk to. This redirects your attention from self-monitoring to other exploration.
Your second tool from Section 3 is the curiosity trigger question. Memorize this and use it internally at the start of every conversation. What is surprising and interesting about this person? The question primes your brain to look for the answer, and the looking crowds out the anxiety.
From Section 4, Neurostabilization. Your primary tool is the 4-7-8 breath. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. Use it before high-pressure situations, during any pause when you need to reset, and every evening as a baseline practice.
Your second tool from Section 4 is the deliberate pause. When you need a moment to think, pause instead of filling with or Take a breath and then speak. Practice this in low-stakes situations first until it becomes natural.
And your third tool from Section 4 is the open posture check. Before and during important conversations, briefly check in with your posture. Shoulders back, chest open, head up, feet grounded. This sends safety signals to your own brain.
From Section 5, Forging the Assertive Identity. Your primary tool is the daily identity routine. Morning affirmation, 1 micro win, error journal entry, curiosity review, and evening breath practice. 20 to 30 minutes a day. Consistent.
Your second tool from Section 5 is the evidence portfolio. Start collecting evidence for your new identity. Every speaking win, no matter how small, goes in the portfolio. Your brain needs this evidence to update its story about who you are.
And your third tool from Section 5 is the act as if question. When you are not sure what a confident communicator would do in a given situation, ask yourself, what would a confident English speaker do right now? And then, as much as you can, do that. Act as if, and let the feelings follow the action.
Before we wrap up, I want to spend some time on common mistakes that learners make when they try to build speaking confidence. Because the road to confidence has some well-known potholes, and if we can help you see them in advance, you can navigate around them.
Mistake number 1, waiting for readiness. I will start speaking in English when my grammar is better. I will join the conversation group when I feel more confident. And the painful truth is, that moment of readiness never comes. Because confidence does not come from preparation. It comes from experience. And experience requires action.
The antidote is setting a specific, concrete action deadline, not, I will speak more English soon, but I will have 1 English conversation with a language exchange partner or a native speaker or a teacher before this Friday. Specific, time-bound, achievable.
Mistake number 2. Practicing in your head instead of out loud. This is sneaky because it feels productive.
You sit and think about what you might say. You rehearse conversations in your imagination, and it feels like preparation. But it does not build speaking confidence, because speaking confidence is a physical skill. It requires physical practice.
Thinking about speaking is like thinking about swimming. It gives you information, but it does not make you able to swim. Only swimming makes you able to swim. So practice out loud, even alone, even in your room. Read English aloud. Shadow native speakers. Talk to your mirror. Record yourself. All of this is infinitely more valuable than thinking about speaking.
Mistake number 3. Avoiding specific things instead of addressing them. Many learners have specific words, specific sounds, specific situations they are particularly afraid of. And instead of practicing those specific things more, they avoid them.
The person who cannot pronounce the th sound learns to replace it with words that do not have it. The person who is terrified of phone calls in English finds every excuse to use email instead. And these avoided areas become sources of disproportionate anxiety. The antidote is targeted practice. Identify your specific areas of weakness or avoidance, and then practice those areas more, not less.
Mistake number 4. Comparing your internal experience to others' external presentation. You see someone speaking English fluently and confidently, and you compare that, their external presentation, to your internal experience, your self-doubt, your anxiety. But you are comparing their surface to your interior, and those two things are not comparable.
That fluent speaker has an internal experience too. They have doubts, fears, moments of uncertainty. You just cannot see that interior. What you see is only the output, and your interior is richer than your output too. The gap between interior and exterior narrows with experience, not because the interior becomes perfect, but because the exterior learns to express more of it.
Mistake number 5. Treating confidence as binary. Either you are confident or you are not. Either this conversation went well or it was a failure. But confidence is not binary. It is a spectrum. Any given speaking situation has dozens of dimensions. Some will go well and some will not. A conversation can have an awkward start and a wonderful middle. You can mispronounce a word and make a beautiful, genuine connection in the same 5 minutes.
So resist the urge to evaluate conversations as simply good or bad. Instead, ask, what went well in that conversation? What would I do differently next time? What did I learn? And always, always find something that went well, because there is always something.
We are getting close to the end of today's lesson, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge something. If you have been here with us for this entire journey today, you have done something important. You have spent real time, real attention on your growth, on understanding yourself, on equipping yourself with tools for real change.
And that decision to invest in yourself, to take your own growth seriously, is itself an act of confidence. It is the kind of thing the person you are becoming does.
So I want to say, on behalf of both of us, we are really proud of the effort you are making. We know that learning a language as an adult is not easy. We know that the vulnerability of speaking when you are uncertain is a real, brave thing to do.
And we are here with you. Every lesson, every video, every piece of content on this channel is designed with one goal: to help you build the English skills and the self-belief to show up fully in every conversation you have.
If this lesson has been valuable to you, if you are walking away with even one idea or one tool that will genuinely help you, please take a moment right now to like this video and share it with someone else who might need it. Every share means another English learner finds this content. Another person who might be quietly struggling with speaking anxiety gets the message that they are not alone and that there is a path forward.
And if you have not already subscribed to this channel, please do. We release new content regularly, and it is all created with the same depth and care you have experienced today. I also want to mention our podcast playlist. If you want to keep building your English listening and speaking skills between our longer videos, the podcast playlist is the perfect companion. Each episode is designed to help you absorb natural, conversational English in a way that is both enjoyable and educational. You can find it right here on this channel.
We genuinely want to be part of your English journey, and we are grateful that you are part of ours.
Let us bring everything together now. 5 shifts, 5 transformations, and I want to walk through them one final time, not as a summary, but as a declaration of where you are going.
You are moving from the biological trap to biological mastery. From being a victim of your amygdala's ancient alarm system to being someone who understands it, names it, and chooses how to respond. Your brain is not your enemy. It is a powerful instrument that you are learning to play.
You are moving from the shame of mistakes to the science of mistakes. From treating every linguistic error as evidence of your inadequacy to treating it as a valuable data point in your ongoing language experiment. You are a scientist of your own speech, and scientists do not fear data. They collect it.
You are moving from performance anxiety to curiosity-driven connection. From walking into conversations asking, "How do I sound?" to walking in asking, "What can I discover here?" From a performer under a spotlight to an explorer with a lantern.
You are moving from physiological chaos to neural stability. From being at the mercy of a stress response that hijacks your voice and your vocabulary to having concrete tools, your breath, your body, your pace, your pause, that you can use to signal safety to your nervous system at will.
And you are moving from the identity of anxiety to the identity of confidence. From "I am a shy person who struggles with English" to "I am a courageous, curious, capable communicator who is growing every single day."
These 5 shifts do not happen all at once. They happen in layers, in conversations, in moments, in micro wins and setbacks and reflections and tries again.
But they do happen. For everyone who commits to them, for everyone who is willing to do the work, one small, brave action at a time.
And I want to leave you with one final image. Imagine yourself 6 months from now, a conversation you are in the middle of. Maybe it is with a colleague or a friend or a stranger you have just met. You are speaking. Not perfectly. There is still a moment here and there where you reach for a word and find it slightly later than you would like. Your accent still carries the music of where you came from.
But here is what is different. You are present. You are there, in the room, in the conversation, with the other person. Your attention is on them. You are genuinely curious. You are genuinely yourself.
And when you say something and it does not come out exactly right, you do not disappear. You do not apologize. You just take a breath, find another way to say it, and continue. Lightly, easily, as if it is no big deal, because it is not.
Because you know something now that you did not fully know before. Mistakes are data. Anxiety is a biological alarm, not a verdict. Your voice matters. Your perspective has value. And the world of English conversation is not an arena where you are being judged. It is a landscape you are exploring.
And in that future conversation, something else happens. The person you were talking to smiles, maybe laughs at something you said, maybe leans in, interested, maybe says, "I have never thought of it that way."
And you realize they are not listening to your grammar. They are listening to you, to your ideas, your curiosity, your warmth,
to the things that make you irreplaceably, specifically, beautifully you.
And in that moment, you will think, I thought I needed perfect English to connect, but all I needed was the courage to show up.
And that courage, you have already shown it today by staying, by listening, by choosing to take your own growth seriously.
So go speak, go connect, go stumble and learn and stumble again and grow. And know that every time you open your mouth in English, every single time, you are doing something brave and something that matters.
We believe in you, and we will be right here in every video, every lesson, every episode of the podcast, cheering you on.
Thank you so much for being here today. We mean that from the bottom of our hearts. Now, go take your next step.
Go speak.
That is it for today's lesson on psychological shifts to overcome speaking anxiety and build unstoppable social confidence. If this was valuable to you, please leave a comment below and tell us which of the 5 shifts resonated most with you. Which one are you going to start practicing first?
We read every comment, and we would genuinely love to hear from you. Your stories, your questions, your progress, they inspire us as much as we hope our content inspires you.
If you would like to keep learning, your next step is right here on this channel. Check out our podcast playlist for more natural English conversations and listening practice, and explore our library of lessons designed specifically for learners who want to speak with confidence.
Subscribe if you have not yet. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new lesson, and share this video with an English learner who needs to hear this message today.
Until next time, keep going, keep growing, and keep speaking.
Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.